Hello and welcome to week 16 of the Based on Balls podcast. I am your host, Hendog, joined alongside Connor for this week's matchups. Had a little bit of an extended break. All-Star weekend was just not this past week, but the week before. So an extended matchup for all of our teams back in the saddle. Connor, how are you doing?
Decent. I mean, I faced one of the top two teams in the league and was nearly doubled in points, but it was overall, I'd say, a happy matchup for me and enjoying the late July weather. So couldn't be better.
Hey, and hey, you do what you could against baseball, and I agree. The weather's been getting a lot better. Over the past, I don't know what's like for you up there, but I felt like for the first 2 months of the summer, it just was like terrible. So finally getting some nice weather, some better weather, I should say, to really kick things off. And it was a very interesting week, obviously, with the extended week. You get a lot more, and we've talked a bit about this, where you you don't get as much upsets because especially with the pitching of some of these lead teams, it kind of separates themselves. But there were a couple of interesting matchups we can talk about. I think the first matchup we should talk about, huge definitely for playoff implications. Chad's Oklahoma City 89ers taking on Paul's Norfolk Tides. Before I get into the matchup, just wanted to formally congratulate Paul on the birth of his child Henry. Obviously, some things bigger than league, bigger than baseball. So shout out Paul for that. But going into this matchup, Chad really need to win this game to stay in the race. Right now, him and Tita are tied for the 7th seed, and they're a game behind Paul for they're tied for the 8th seed, game behind Paul for the 7th seed. And this was a huge matchup, especially if Chad wanted to keep his playoff hopes alive, and especially we'll talk a bit about it later with who he plays now. Huge win for him. Bats really came to play. 622 points, including, the big star had to be Xavier Edwards, the standout youngster for Miami, had 149 points, including a cycle. He's been on an absolute tear, but still got some great performances from guys like Anthony Santander, eternally underrated. And his pitching kept up pace with Paul. 530 points, one less than the Tides. And for Paul, you'd probably, especially in this extended week, you would have wanted to hit 1,000. Just couldn't do it. The bats really weren't that spectacular. 450 points in extended week really isn't going to cut it. But like we mentioned before, obviously Paul had, obviously big news for him in terms of the real world sphere. But in terms of, the Johnny Lee Memorial League, could not get it done. And Chad keeps pace. Connor, I'll kick it over to you. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, so I do want to reemphasize the pitching 530 to 531. Right on the money. For Chad and a team coming out of a clear rebuild, the biggest question is how does the pitching hold up? And John Gray being injured, Ronaldo Lopez leaving a start early, certainly tough, but this proved he belonged in the playoff and doubly so. The conversation might shift to is Chad a 7 seed to is he potentially going to get into that 5 or 6 spot? And for Paul, this certainly isn't a bad result, but it's a little bit underwhelming compared to the potential peers. 300 points behind Cody, 200 points behind Jab, behind Height. You would have beat him by 100. So to get into that first tier of the playoffs, I don't think he showed it. I'm not sure if this matchup helps my low-key pipe dream of Paul going crazy buying at the deadline, but I think it was a fun matchup, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Chad does in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I do want to make a tidbit. I didn't realize I had it messed in my head. So I said Paul's the 7th, he's actually the 6th. Chad now slides in with the 7, tie for Tito for that last spot. But going to your point about Paul buying, I just feel, obviously a lot can change. We saw what happened with the deadline last year. It doesn't seem like it's really a buyer's market this year. It seems like a lot of the teams who, at least from what I'm seeing, you can obviously talk about this yourself. A lot of the teams who would possibly buy, I feel like, have really been settling in, and a lot of the deals they want to make or could make, I feel like they already have, and they feel content with where they are. I remember, but deadline day is always crazy. I remember last year, teams were making trades until the last hour. That could still happen in this year, but for me, your point about Paul being an ultra buyer, I just don't know if the market will warrant that because I don't think many teams are really selling to the degree they were, let's say, last year, or assets weren't being moved to the degree like they were last year, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have my opinions on the buyer seller market, but I think I'll wait for that for the trade section or perhaps our closing to go in further.
Okay, then I guess you'll have to stay in tune for that. We definitely talk a bit more about that, especially with the two big trades that happened this week. But I want to jump over to the next matchup with some big playoff implications. And look, Tita, wasn't a pretty win. Honestly, in a regular week, it would be a low amount of points, but ended up getting the victory, winning 662 to 573. The two lowest point totals for the week, or actually no, the third least and the least most points of this week. Um, Obviously, I mean, with Chad getting the win over Paul, Tita definitely needed to win this week. And look, if you would have played any other team except actually, and I also just saw Smell had 500 points as well. If he played any other team except for Connor and Smell, he would have lost. But that's not how the it shook out. Looking at it, can't really say a whole lot. Very low scoring matchup. It's kind of weird to contextualize because you're saying in a regular week you'd be like, oh, 330 points from the bats, not bad. 330 from the arms, not bad either. I guess you could say Tita had a very balanced effort, but in terms of a multi-week, not ideal. Although he still had some good performances. Spencer Schwellenbach for the Braves really getting it on. 66 points to lead the way for some pitchers, and then a great set of relievers for Tita as well. Joey Estes, sliding in the reliever spot, had 20 points. Carlos Estevez, newly acquired by the Phillies with 25. Chad Green with 31. Trevor McGill, even though he got hurt, still added 25 points as well. I think the big storyline for this week had to be the pitching from Scott. Only with 8 starts, did I even hit the minimum of the week? I don't think that did. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he hit the minimum for the week. 126 points is pretty like lackluster in even a regular week. But his bats did well. 447 points, very impressive. Jorge Soler 83, but it really was just the pitching. 8 starts in a 2-week window, not that great at all. Had a couple of negative starts. Nestor Cortez, who looks like he could be on the move potentially for the Yankees. He did get a 79-point week out of Brady Singer, but really not a lot to ride home about. This, if Scott gets 8 more, if Scott matches Tita starts, he wins this game I think pretty obviously, but Tita, I guess, is the beneficiary of Scott just not utilizing the pitching.
Yeah, I kind of have an incomplete grade on this one. Tita was very clearly out compared to his normal schedule. Football's picking up for him amongst some other things, perhaps. So this is not the score he was hoping for. But going back to the bigger picture, the benchmark right now is Chad. If he tops Chad or tops Paul, Tita's in the playoffs. He won't if he can't do that. So, do I think Tita would score 662 points if he had the ability to be more attentive to this matchup? Yes. Do I think he gets to 1152, what Chad did? Absolutely not. Tita had a very consistent team, but being consistent means that the ceiling isn't always that high in this case. So I do think we're definitely going to see some more Tita moves the 2 weeks before the deadline, but this has got to be a disappointment. And then for Scott, this might be the second strike for the start min. I need to get an LM's opinion on that, but Yeah, outside of Brady Singer's 79, the pitching was abysmal, and certainly there's a bat or two that could move. Jorge Soler finally turning it on, but um, it's a rough matchup and been a rough year for the Flying Squirrels.
Yeah, and I mean, we could talk a bit about like what Scott will do. Obviously, the two strike mark is key. Really can't go again. I mean, we'll double check with our LMs to make sure, but that does seem accurate to what I'm thinking. And I know there's been times where Scott has teetered on that line as well. So I mean, we can check with one of the LMs to verify that. But no, yeah, I mean, it's kind of you need to hit the star minimum. Really doesn't have a lot of pitchers on his roster to begin with. Um, Dealt with a lot of injuries. I mean, obviously, but I think this is something he's going to have to address. I mean, quite frankly, if he wants to stay in the league, more so not even just to compete, but also to kind of be in the league. So we'll definitely see what happens there. And besides from those two matchups, like I kind of allude to, not a whole lot of not a lot of not many other tightly contested affairs. A lot of the other matchups were settled for the most part by 200, 300 points. We'll still go through them. But from what I saw, those were really the two matchups that stood out in terms of, kind of importance. I guess, if we're looking at the next closest matchup, we'll go to myself, Clearwater Beach Dogs taking on the Rochester Red Wings. Actually, I'll kick it to you, Connor. I'll let you start with everything. What were your thoughts on this matchup?
I mean, 1,100 points. You're back to being an elite team. This is awesome. 576 points from the offense, even in extended weeks, absolutely terrific. And 510, both your team and Dave's really had balance, but yours was a level, maybe two levels above that. I miss you, Jeff Hoffman. I traded him to you for worse, thinking, oh, he's an elite setup man. I need the roster for other things. Now he's kind of been more involved in closing and kept that production going. Clay Holmes can move to Hong Kong for all you and I care, I guess. But for the moat, Tyler Phillips with 93. What a shutout for him. Just a consistent performance, and I really hope that this is what we see out of the Beach Dogs in the playoffs. Then for Dave, I think this is pretty much what you can ask for. I don't think his team's cracking 1,000 points in an extended week, just given how tough it is for the pitching to keep up in that time frame. Bailey Ober is player 87 that if Dave is putting on the market, I would hope that every GM is asking about, and certainly some nice core pieces, but different class of teams, and you showed why.
No, yeah, definitely can't be too upset with this performance. 576 and 576 with the bats, 500 from the arms. Shout out Brent Rooker, who had 104 points this week, 13 of 39, 4 homers, 13 RBIs. I mean, he had double the RBIs that he did strikeouts, and it got a lot of other solid performances all around, including Miguel Andujar gave me a nice 62 as well. Although actually I just recently dropped him to kind of free up some roster space. But yeah, and also talking about Tyler Phillips, complete game shutout in his fourth career start. Someone I also got for you for pretty cheap. With Taiwan Walker being sidelined, or with Taiwan Walker and Spencer Turnbull being out, that fifth spot in the rotation has opened up for the Phillies. And I took a flyer on him just because the quality of the team I knew was good, and thought he could at least be a serviceable arm. But he's been more than really what I expected. Hopefully, he can keep this up. We'll definitely see. Could just be kind of a getting a really hot start. But I really like the production I saw from him. And then for Dave's perspective, I mean, he did well. I mean, I think I agree with you. Just kind of a class thing. 865 was roughly in the middle in terms of the production this week, and that's kind of where I'd place Dave, roughly in the middle. I know in the standings he's the 9th seed, but we obviously know how well his team's been doing, especially of late. But really can't say anything about Dave. I think he's doing what he needs to do. Will be interesting. He does have a couple of pieces I could see potentially, because I think he's now out of the playoff picture. We can also talk about that if you want in terms of trading. But there is that matchup, and we'll kick over now to your matchup. The Bowling Green Hot Rods taking on the Amarillo Saw Pools. Cody, with a commanding 1240 to 656 victory. I mean, absolutely amazing stuff. Over 600 points from both the bats and the arms. Obviously, with the arms, a lot. I mean, you got to talk about Dylan Cease, who threw a no hitter this past week, 225 points. He also had another quality start to add to it. Definitely, good for Cody. And we'll obviously talk about the moves he made later on, but you really can't complain. Just some great stuff all around. Emmanuel Clase with 55 points out of the bullpen, 37 from Camilo Doval as well. Got an 81-point week from Michael King. And then in terms of the bats, Jaron Duran kicking as always. I know he picked him up recently. Lawrence Butler's been coming out of nowhere with an 80-point week. It's very weird. Everyone on the A's just seems to be doing well, which I definitely think no one really expected going in. Josh Chisholm with a nice 65 points as well. And then for your team, Connor, newly minted Seattle Mariner Randy Arozarena with 87 points. Xander Bogaerts with 89. 490 points from the bats. In terms of what we've been seeing this week, is not bad. It's the pitching really couldn't do a whole lot. Ryan Stanek with a negative 12. Got negative 12 from Steven Kolick. Marco Gonzalez gave you negative stars as well. And Yiber Diaz, I believe is how you pronounce it, from Arizona, negative 21 as well. I mean, really, it was just kind of like Cody's team is just in another class compared to yours. Bats held up, the arms, that's a whole different question.
It's in another class A, but not bump. In all seriousness, I mean, this was not going to be a competitive matchup by any stretch of the imagination. It was 100-point difference on the second day, I guess Saturday, for the extended week. So that was tough. As a rebuilder, and shout out Cody, of course, terrific job. I think lost being the number one scorer by 20 points, which proves that he's a total competitor, and I would say in favorite to win the championship. I'm looking for two things: individual performances, and am I the worst scorer in the league? If that's the case, I've done either something wrong or I've done way too good in selling pieces off. So I kind of checked both those boxes. I was like the third or fourth worst scorer, which par for the course. But I did have some individual performances I'm pretty happy about. Cal Quantrill with 45 and a 2 start week. Not the biggest name, but he's just been a quality depth arm, 15 points per game. Maybe I flip him for a worst of two, maybe I don't. Xander Bogaerts with 89. He's been a guy who's been on my injured list for 2 months and waiting for him to crank it back up. Randy, I could see moving, and my new acquisition, Mason Wynn, 50 points in 39 at bats. That's what I want to see from my future shortstop. So some pieces that I'd hope to move around, or as I try to judge how my team looks going forward, but this is still the Cody show.
Yeah, Cody definitely cementing himself. Still with a game lead, and obviously with the matchups this week, that could really change in terms of the 1 seed. But I'll go over now to the only team who outscored them this week, the Hartford Yard Goats, taking on the Bismarck Larks in a Seton Hall or former Seton Hall matchup. Both these guys graduated, John Height and Bracton. Well, Bracton's in grad school, but John Height graduated, and so Bracton for undergrad. 1268 to 675. John Height's bats outscored Bracton's entire team 698. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about because we saw 2 cycles, or I know we saw at least 1 cycle. We saw 1 or 2 cycles this week, and we saw a no-hitter. 2 things that don't happen a lot, and I know that's been kind of a topic of discussion, how much points should they be worth, but the fact that both those events happened, actually we saw 2 cycles because Jordan also got 1 for Jab. We saw 2 cycles and no-hitter, and John Height ended up with the most points, and he didn't have any of those players. I mean, just absolute masterclass from John Height. I mean, looking at the bats, 107 from Francisco Lindor. Tyler Fitzgerald coming out of nowhere with 65. I think he has, 7 in his first 10? 7 in his first 10, 8 in his first 10. He did something that Barry hasn't been done since Barry Bonds. So if you do that, you're in good company. Aaron Judge with 99. Looks like he's kind of found himself, got himself back after a little bit of a slump, I would say, with the Yankees doing bad. Jerkson Profar with 85. Shohei Ohtani with 99. And Marcell Ozuna, the eternally, not great guy, but someone who I think, especially when John Height made a trade, caught a lot of flack for 74 points. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous stuff. And then in terms of the arms, Carlos Rodon turning back the clock with an 82 point start. And then Tanner Scott with, I believe, the second most points out of any pitcher for John Haidt out of the bullpen. 65 points, 4 saves in 5 and 1/3 innings pitched, no earned runs given up, and only 1 hit allowed. Beautiful stuff. And then Bracton, 578 points with the bats. Not bad. He got 122 out of Juan, so excuse me. And we'll talk about him. Ellie De La Cruz with 92, 74 from Josh Bell, who actually did just get DFA'd. But the pitching, he had 2 positive starting pitchers this week. It's not going to cut it. I mean, do you have anything really to add to this, Connor?
Bracton stopped putting Carlos Carrasco on the trade block. No one's buying him. I will say the first day or two, Bracton was in the lead as Soto had like a 30-point game or something. And that would have been funny if that lasted longer. But no, there's not too much to add here.
Yeah. Carlos Carrasco, -3 in a 2-start week, 15 hits, 12 earned runs. And we'll talk about Bracton's team later. But we got 2 more matchups to talk about before we get into the big deals for the week. The Portland Sea Dogs Jab taking on the Rocket City Trash Pandas, winning 1169 to 682. Jab with 765 points, just absolutely absurd. That outscored 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams on the week. So Jab's just his bats would have been in the top half of scoring this week. And then his arms doing their thing as well, 404 points. Like I mentioned before, Yordan Alvarez picked up the cycle in a 104-point week. Tyler O'Neill, 110 points in a non-cycle week. Bobby Witt Jr. also with 110. He had 4 different batters with over 4. Is that right? Is that 4 or 5? 4 batters with over 100 points, and then he had Ketel Marte right behind him with 85. Arms did what they need to do in terms, 404 points in extended weeks. Very solid, I would say. Bryce Miller leading the way with 64. And then on the side of Homko, I mean, we talk about, this felt like a week where a lot of the teams, it just felt like they just were playing. It was just a different tier of class. You're talking about, you and Cody, John Haidt, Bracton, myself and Dave, although Dave's been very competitive recently. There's still the talent disparity. This matchup, Jab and Homko, and we kind of saw it here. 682 points. He did get a good performance out of Nick Castellanos, Brandon Lau, Teoscar Hernandez, all-star Teoscar Hernandez, and then the pitching. Brian Wu left early, but he did get a 45-point week from Andres Munoz. So that's someone who could potentially, if someone's looking for a reliever or just wants to upgrade their reliever, because he's in the top half in terms of reliever points. Definitely someone who could be on the move, but yeah, just kind of a similar theme that we saw this week, where just Jab is in a completely different tier compared to Homko.
I think Homko's trade deadline is going to be the most interesting to me because he was projected to maybe be a low seed playoff team or one of the first teams out of it, and he's the bottom 3 team in the league right now. So how much does he keep the pieces for next year or sell them off? This is not what he wanted whatsoever. And then for Jab, this is exactly what you want. Maybe you're not beating Cody or Haidt in a regular season game, but 700 points from the bats, that's going to scare anybody. So I do think, not too much to talk about here, but yep.
Yeah. So yeah. And then the final matchup of this week, the Rocky Mountain Vibes Bryce team with 994 points, taking down the El Paso Chihuahuas, who had 542. Connor, actually, I'm gonna double check this because I think Smell actually also might have not hit the start limit, but I'm gonna double check. What was the minimum? Okay, I do not know what the minimum was for this. Oh, 10. So Smell did hit the start minimum with 10. I didn't know if it was 10 or 11. So, but 994 for Bry, 542 for Smell. Really came down to the pitching. I feel like we've been saying this, but 421 from the arms in terms of Bry. a 70-point start by Tarek Skubal. I mean, you probably making the case the best pitcher in baseball this year. Pablo Lopez getting back on track with a 70-point week as well, and the 573 from the bats. O'Neal Cruz with 94, great week out of him, and then a bunch of guys who scored in the 40s or 50s. It didn't seem like anyone really on his team, with the exception. I mean, Jeff McNeil played one game for him and had 7 points. And I guess Michael Garcia also had a little bit, but it seemed like everyone he had put some output in. Although I will say Ozzy Albies did hit the IL with an injury with a fractured left wrist, so we'll see how long he's out for. That's obviously a huge loss for him. And then going over to Smell, 424 points from the bats, but only 118 from the arms. Although he did get a 51-point week out of Cade Smith. Connor, what do you think of this?
Who in the world is Cade Smith? In all seriousness, Smell isn't too worried about the score. There are some definitely interesting individual performances. Hogan Harris now demoted, 37 points, solid. For Bry, I honestly find this matchup a little more concerning because he was very clearly in the top four of, I think, most tiers, and he was not a top three scorer in the league. So compared to height, even Chad, the score is just lower. Garrett Crochet was traded pretty close for Julio Rodriguez. 6 points in a 2-start week. That is not what Bry wants to see. So I do think that some of these lower end pitching performances might need to turn around for the playoffs, but Bry is Bry. It's a consistent team and a consistent GM, and I'm sure he's going to figure it out.
Yeah. Also, in addition to people going down, Ranger Suarez, who has been, he's definitely kind of tapered off as recently, his recent starts, but as a whole had been just an absolute rock for the first half of the season. Went down on the 10-day IL with a or 15-day IL, excuse me, with back soreness. We'll see how long he's out for, but that's obviously a huge loss to him as well, especially as we're getting to kind of, the dog days of summer. We'll definitely see how Bry approaches. I think he does have a lot of assets, or what still has a decent amount of prospects, but to work with as well. And also, Cade Smith is a reliever for the Cleveland Guardians for those back at home. But that is it for the matchups. We now have 4 teams who have officially clinched the playoffs. Cody clinched it not this past week, but the week before. And then with their wins this week, Bry, John Height, and Jab all clinched the playoffs. All 4 of those teams sit at 13-3 or better with 3 or 4 weeks left to go, excuse me. So top 4 seeds can really still go to whoever, and we'll see how that develops. But looking now, we'll head to the trades. You alluded to it a bit earlier. Obviously, no Tita this week with getting ready for football season hasn't been as active. So the trade market hasn't been active, but there's still there's 2 big trades I want to talk about. If there's anything else you want to talk about, we can touch on it afterward. But I think these are definitely the 2 biggest trades of this week. First trade is Homko and Cody, a 2-for-2. Homko gets Tyler Glasnow and Cody Bellinger. Cody gets Jarren Duran and Cutter Crawford. I'll start with you, Connor. What are your thoughts on this deal?
And I think this is a very good deal for both sides. Jarren Duran is an all-star 5-tool player. It's the Cody star that he wants, and Cutter Crawford is a pitcher I still believe in. For Homko, this is a calculate gamble on Tyler Glasnow. Good way to get around injured pitching and inconsistency there. Go get arguably a top 3 fantasy pitcher and hope that his back holds up. Cody Bellinger honestly doesn't do much for me here, but in terms of name brand, I think Homko wins, but I wouldn't want to underestimate Cody's return here either.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting move. It also, I feel like, kind of goes against the philosophy that we've always said, where it's really the pitching is what you want to strive for. And I know Tyler Glasnow has been someone who hasn't really. I mean, he started the season hot, got injured, and especially like in his last couple of starts leading up to his injury, and then his most recent start hasn't been amazing. But like you said, when he's healthy, he's a top 3 pitcher, and if he's someone who, if he can string together a couple of 30-point starts before our trade deadline, I think almost any team. I think even Cody would try trading back for him. Just because I think in terms of what he offers as a ceiling, I definitely think he can get more. Like, I mean, obviously, giving up Jaron Duran is huge, but especially with what Homko I think should try to do in terms of more of like a restocking of assets. I definitely think that this is a good power play by him. Cutter Crawford's still a very solid arm. Just kind of reliable arm in a Boston Red Sox team that's fight for a playoff spot around 20 point per game arm. Those are a luxury. You can't have too many of them. I agree with you. Cody Bellinger really doesn't add much, but I think it's a move that serves both the purpose for both teams. I'm really curious to see what Homko does with Glass now. I mean, I know you said you wanted to touch a bit on Homko and his kind of what his trade market could look like. We can talk about that now, or we can wait until after we talk about the Soto deal. I don't know what you want to when you want to talk about that, but I think especially now with Glass now in his hands, that's easily probably if he does trade, probably the best trade chip that could be dealt on deadline day or deadline season.
Yeah, that would be crazy if he moved at the deadline, but that would be a way to definitely retool a lot of pieces.
Yeah, definitely something we'll keep track of indeed. But the next big trade involves Cody once again, and a trade between two LMs, Braxton and Cody. Cody gets Juan Soto for Jackson Merrill, Jared Jones, Matt Gore, and Zach Geloff. It's actually funny, Connor. Well, I mean, obviously, I think we've been on the podcast a decent amount together, two of us. But I think the last time I was on the podcast was when we talked about the Jab Juan Soto deal. And Braxton flips him to Cody. I remember I said at the time I really didn't get the trade for either team, but I said Braxton was the one who came out on top because he got the best player. I just don't like. I don't know. Like, you could argue Braxton probably shouldn't have traded for Juan Soto anyway, and I agree with you. But the assets he gave up to get Juan Soto is less than what he got back in return. And it just seems like the reshuffling of the deck, kind of this go out and get a big star, but then flip him later this flip flopping is something that he's done, I'd say, over the last year. I can't speak to before I joined the league, to where it just seems like he's in this limbo state. I don't love this trade for him. I know he got him back, but in the original deal, Braxton gave up James Wood, who I think is, we've talked about him, probably the best prospect in baseball, or at least in that top 3 conversation. He is definitely, I'd say an A-level dynasty asset. Obviously, we don't know how it'll turn out, but someone who has some speed, can hit for power, is 6'7". I forget I remember I saw like a statistic where in terms of like players who were 6'7", and had like the power tool were like, it was like Judge and Ellie, I forget the metrics, but like he's obviously a baseball unicorn in terms of his size and his ability as well. Brighton really didn't get any of those kind of guys back in this deal. Like, Jackson Merrill's like a B+ quality asset, I would say. He's not bad. He's a very playable player. I think he would get runtime on, I would say most contenders, especially ones where, maybe you don't have a great shortstop, or your outfield's a bit lacking, or you just need a back end utility bat. But he's not Juan Soto. He's not like, the cream of the crop in terms of dynasty assets. He did get a couple of arms, but Jared Jones is someone who is more of like, I would say, a low end 2, a low end SP2, high end SP3. Like not a bad arm, but just not amazing, I would say. I think Matt Gore has a little bit, Matt Gore is a little bit of a higher ceiling, but he's never really kind of actualized that potential. And I think right now he's probably worse than where Jared Jones is, in my opinion, although Jones is on the IL, and then Zach Geloff. I'm not really a huge fan of him, although the or not Orioles, the A's have been doing better. He just doesn't really move the needle for me. But Cody obviously gets Juan Soto, adding to an already ridiculous lineup. And we can say that no one was really competing for, the market maybe wasn't what Braxton expected, so he kind of maybe sold low to get rid of him. I don't think that's an excuse to get rid of him, but you know, Cody gets a top three bat in all of baseball, and I don't think he really gave up, nearly as much as I think he should have. But I obviously that's just my opinion.
Yes, in concept, I like this trade for Braxton. You're getting rid of one star for a bunch of not lottery tickets, but very nice pieces, diversifying the portfolio. I just don't like the pieces he did it with. Mackenzie Gore seems like for the last couple years, very high end starter. He's 25 and seems to have comfortably settled into a 3 starter, great 4 starter on a playoff team role. Zach Geloff, certainly high upside, but what is the future looking like for the Athletics? What is around him? Jared Jones, I agree, SP2, and Jackson Merrill is certainly a good player. Are those 4 worth James Wood and Jackson Churio? I don't know. Cody gets his star, and maybe I was kind of warming up to the idea that Braxton would have his own star, and if it was 4 different names of similar calibers, I might have a different reaction, but this one's rubbing me the wrong way.
Yeah, I don't really love it that much. Yeah, because like he does diversify the portfolio, like you say, but if I'm trading away Juan Soto, well, I mean, I guess I'll speak personally when I trade Juan Soto. I want someone who I can comfortably feel, even if it doesn't work out. It's more, I think it's if it, you know, I want someone who I can comfortably say, I'm getting someone who is like in that echelon, like, not as good as Juan Soto, but like at least either has the potential or is close to it. I don't think he got it. Like Jackson Merrill probably, caps out at like a maybe a 6.5 point per game bad. That might be stretching it, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't think he'll ever be a 7 point per game bad, but a 6.5 point per game bat's a good asset. Definitely an asset any contender could use. And we've talked about Braxton needing arms, and he got 2 arms. When Jared Jones comes back, I'm pretty sure he'll be his SP1. I mean, either him or I guess Clark Schmidt. But I mean, I guess Jared Jones is better, but Schmidt's in the better organization. I just don't like. Yeah, I'd rather have James Wood and Jackson Churio. I agree with you. I just don't get like. I understood the process when Braxton made the deal for Soto, but I really don't get it. Him trading him away. We'll see how this plays out for him and for Cody. But that's my thoughts on the situation. So, is there anything more you want to touch on in terms of other deals, or you want to kind of preview these upcoming matchups?
So there was a third deal, Max Scherzer for Connor Norby and some other prospect that, I mean, okay, whatever. 3 trades. Hopefully there's more. I'm very interested. I think you alluded to this earlier. That's not really a buyer's market. A lot of teams were maybe proactive in getting bats ahead. The downside to that is, well, the rosters are filled. Where do you go to make upgrades? I think most teams prefer to have 1 or 2 rotation spots where they can use the waiver wire, pick up folks that they think are going to have long innings in relief or might have been their treasure when they were another man's trash. So I'm optimistic that there can be an explosive deadline, but I do think it's going to be quieter. But hopefully the trade section's more enticing next week than it was this one.
Yeah, definitely in my experience being in this league, I mean, excluding out like when trades have been available, it's definitely been the quietest week. And I think part of it has to do with teams being a lot more proactive. Like, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I traded for Bryce Harper midseason. I traded for Carlos Correa midseason. Um, I already traded for them, and so and obviously, well, Correa is injured right now, but a player like that who maybe would have waited, I think they're not getting dealt earlier. I mean, we could talk about a team like Homco, who I think is not littered with guys with great guys like that, but definitely a couple of movable assets. I mean, Trey Turner, in terms of bats, definitely the biggest one. Although, I'm still not sure how likely he would to trade him, but he's got him. Teoscar Hernandez is a fine asset as well. Alec Bohm is, he's been kind of slumping, but I mean, if you're banking on the Phillies, I mean, the Phillies in general are just a elite offense, and you're banking on the production. I guess you have that as well in terms of the arms. We talked about Tyler Glass now. Will he trade him? I'm not entirely sure, but he has him. He has Brian Wu, who's a very promising young arm. Although we'll see what kind of his injury situation is. Isn't expected to miss his next start, so it looks like he should be fine. Andres Munoz is a great bullpen arm, so he has assets to move. Um, it's kind of how aggressive he wants to be with them. He doesn't have his first round pick, so that could be a situation where he's kind of more hesitant on selling because if you don't have your first round pick, it's kind of what's the point of really going full out for the tank? But you could also just say, I'm already the second worst team. I mean, I guess I could move up, but it's not like I'm gonna get higher than what the 10 seed, maybe the 9 seed if he really gets on a run. But I think that's someone who has a lot of assets. But I'm trying to think of other teams. Dave also has assets, and I think with what has transpired, it looks like he probably won't get in because, well, actually, hold on. Dave actually might be mathematically eliminated now, although I could be wrong because Tita and Chad play each other this week. Tita and Chad play each other this week. And so, regardless, Dave will be a game behind or 3 games behind one of those teams. I guess maybe he's still mathematically in it, but the likelihood is very much gone now. He's got some assets. We've talked about it as well, especially how well his team's been doing. But yeah, it's interesting. I think it depends on how proactive these teams who are on on the outside of the playoff picture are in terms of selling. Are they someone, or do they want to sell whatever movable asset that's above the age of 26, or are they going to be like, what, I want to hold on to a Christian Walker, I want to hold on to I guess Alec Bohm is older than 26, and Alec Bohm, I want to hold on to an Andreas Munoz, or are they like, look, I just want to get whatever I can. I know I'm not going to make the playoffs this year. We'll think of kind of retooling our major league roster next year.
Yeah, I mean, as a dude who resigned himself to not making the playoffs in week 3, I know there are going to be a couple teams there eager to sell. He's going to be doing a mix or whatever. But like Dave, Homko, how many pieces do they actually put out there when they think they've built a team that just got unlucky this year and will be pretty competitive next one?
Yeah, it's definitely something interesting indeed. Yeah, definitely quiet. I mean, there's still 2 big trades that happened. I mean, for as the quantity isn't as what we usually expect, but I think in most weeks, this Juan Soto deal would be deal of the week. I think even the Glass now deal would be something that would, I don't know if it'd be the deal of the week in most cases, but it definitely would be one of the top deals in most weeks regardless. So we still had that going forward. But I think we're going to hit on the final part of this. We're going to look at the matchups for this week. And I'm kind of contemplating between what I would think for matchup of the week is. I think it's really a two-headed race. Um, I don't think. I mean, I guess these are the two I'm up to. We can talk about them two first, and we'll go on. I don't think the implications between my team and Cody's team are, they're not as high because Cody's already locked in the playoffs. I guess he's still, making sure he can get the 1 seed, and I haven't technically clinched the playoffs yet, so I'm still trying to fight for a playoff spot. But it seems like in terms of, getting in the dance, it's very much solidified. You could argue this is a preview of a playoff matchup, so that's why you can make it for matchup of the week. And I wouldn't disagree with you there. So we'll start with this matchup, and then we'll go to the other matchup. I think is match of the week. It is my Clearwater Beach Dogs taking on the Bowling Green Hot Rods. I'll actually kick it to you, Connor. What do you think is going to happen this week's matchup?
So we're starting with you and Cody.
Yeah, we're starting with me and Cody.
Well, you're certainly off to a nice start. Up by 5 points. Use 2 starts to 3, unless one of them was an opener or something. Very nice. I do think I really want to call the upset for you, man, but I just think that Cody's going to roar back. Juan Soto, there's going to be some life here, 17 points already. I've got Cody by 20, but I'm really hoping that you can pull off the upset and shock the world and say why your team is the one that got to the finals last year.
Yeah, and I mean I respect the take. I'm going to disagree. I'm going to pick myself to win. I definitely think having I mean, obviously there's still a lot of game left, but I mean having the start advantage and still being up's huge. Zach Wheeler with an uncharacteristic -3 start. I think he is in his 2-start week. I would presume. Um, August 4th. What day is that? That's Sunday. Yes, August 4th is Sunday, so we'll get a 2-start Zach Wheeler week. I assume he'll also get one for Logan Gilbert. Actually, Logan Gilbert and Zach Wheeler will be facing off against each other as well. So potentially that could decide the matchup. Who does better in that matchup? Obviously, Cody getting Juan Soto is huge for him. Um, I know this is something he kind of alluded to while dealing away Glass now, and obviously, and then dealing away some arms this week. The pitching rotation is still good. It's very top heavy. I don't know if he's gonna hit the starts. Right now I think it says he's hitting 11. If I read that correctly. So right now he's at 11. So he needs to find another start somewhere, unless he just didn't set the lineup right and he has 12. But that could be something that could be huge. I definitely assume if it came down to him getting a 12th start and him needing a 12th start, he definitely will go out and buy a 12th start. That's how Cody operates. I think that's how Cody would operate as a GM, especially him knowing the stakes of him just kind of keep up pace. And I think in general he just needs another arm with the deals he's made recently. But I'm gonna pick myself to win. I think this is really a good test for me. I think in this recent stretch where I've really been rolling off some wins, I feel like for the most part I've been playing lesser quality teams. My one loss, I think, in the past couple of months, or 2 or 3 months, has been to Bry, but beat Paul. Paul was obviously it was a big win for me, but it seems like a lot of these wins I'm kind of riding off are more towards the teams that aren't in playoff contention. So we'll definitely see. Definitely the biggest test for my team thus far, but I'm confident we can definitely pull it off, and I'm excited to see how it is. So the next matchup in terms of matchup of the week, and if you want to kind of if you want to say what your thoughts on what matchup of the week should be, very much hearing that as well. But I think the other contender for matchup of the week is the Oklahoma 89ers versus the Nashville Sounds. Chad currently leading 127-72. This is the game for the 7th seed, straight up. I mentioned before the implications of this game are much higher than me and Cody's because, barring a late season collapse for myself, I'm probably in the playoffs. Or I'm probably going to be in the playoffs, just depending on what seed I get. I guess hypothetically, and Cody obviously is trying to keep the 1 seed and get that first round bye, but he also has a game still in hand to where he could lose and still, in a sense, controls their destiny. This is a game where whoever loses, I think, is out of the playoffs. Barring a collapse from the other team. But just previewing what's going on right now, Chad is leading. I think I like Chad in this matchup. I mean, for one, you mentioned it, Tita. Obviously, first year as head coach. Want to wish him best of luck. It's known he hasn't been as active as recently, while Chad's been, to my knowledge, kind of keeping status quo. I think that definitely will help him out. I just also think I like Chad's team, the state of Chad's team better than Tita's. That could change if Tita really wants to get active in terms of dealing, but I don't think I don't think he's just in a position to do that right now. Like I said, could be wrong, but I really like Chad in this matchup. I think he has a Paul Skeens 2-star week, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he started this week. If the schedule plays out right, he should get another start, and he'll get another 12 points for a quality start and a win as well for Skeens. So I think I like Chad in this matchup to beat Tita.
Yeah, I'm going with Chad as well. This is your matchup versus Cody is going to be the highest quality of play we see this week. Chad and Tita has the biggest playoff ramifications. I don't see a scenario where you or Paul fall out of the playoffs, quite frankly. So it's going to be one of these two that are out. Chad's currently has a 50-point advantage, and if it gets close, Chad has 4 times the prospects and picks to add on. So I think this is an encouraging start. It's kind of hard to go against a 2-start Paul Skeens start week. And I think Jordan Westberg for 33 already, he's been a revelation. So I don't know if the Orioles are going to stay this hot, but Tita's a magician for trades, and maybe he gets his way into that. But if Chad's scoring 650, let's say, I'm not confident the Sounds pull that off. So let's go Chad by 70.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. If Chad wins and makes it in, he would be the only change in the playoff picture from last year to this year, if I'm not mistaken. So, Chad could definitely, create a wrinkle in terms of playoff, making the playoffs and being the one team that made it this year that didn't make it last year. But still a lot of game left. Tita can still finally pull it off. But I agree with you. I like Chad's chances here in this matchup. So we'll touch on your matchup next. The Amarillo Sapoodles off to a hot start, 151-23 against the Rochester Red Wings. I guess I'll start for my. Excuse me. I'll start myself. I'm not entirely sure what your direction, what you're planning on doing. I know obviously when you play a lot of these, your philosophy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you love try winning each week. You love to compete every single week, but you also look at the bigger picture as a whole, and you try to better yourself as a whole. So if it means losing, the week as a whole, I want to compete every single week from my understanding and knowledge. But obviously, you got a huge week this week. Already 116 points from the bats. Alec Marsh gave you a start, I guess, and then Carson Spires gave you a nice start as well. And Dave only had one start with where Jordan Montgomery got lit up, and will also get docked for the loss, presumably. Big stuff. I'd like to say you're going to win. I think there's a very good avenue you are going to win. I think Dave just might have the talent, especially, also I'm looking, he has 12 starts. Right now you're only scheduled for 8. Also, I don't know if you set your lineup yet, but I think I'm going to go Dave here, but I think it's going to be a close game, especially with the lead you've already built yourself in this early stage of the matchup.
Dave has more talent in the major league level, no doubt about it. This matchup weirdly does mean a lot to me. I don't really have beef with Dave. I think he's a phenomenal GM, but he and I have really gone about this in completely different ways. This year, I have been the GM of going wide and maybe not having the most premium assets, but getting the biggest number of prospects and picks. Dave has kept a low prospect and pick count and continued to buy even when the playoff odds seem low. So just given the contrasting styles of rebuilding or what the next year or two looks like in terms of playoff implications, I want to see if my strategy can top his essentially. So this is definitely a nice start. I got to pick myself at this point, but I would not be surprised if Dave fully makes the comeback.
I like that. Having confidence in yourself, that's huge. You gotta love to see that. Um, Next matchup I think we'll touch on is the Rocky Mountain Vibes taking on the Rocket City Trash Pandas. Bry currently up 78-42. Um, Bry is in the midst of a start and is in the midst of one start, and then Homko had two starts go for him already, including Yariel Rodriguez, who got shelled and then proceeded to get optioned right after as well. Toronto obviously making some moves at the deadline. Um, this is obviously, for Bry, we talked about he didn't really score where he needed to last week. I don't think that's a kind of a long term trajectory thing. I think it was just kind of an off week for him, but this is a week where, especially where Cody could potentially lose. This is obviously huge in the race for the 1 seed. I'm gonna say Bry's gonna win. He just has the better team. Um, I don't even know one. I don't know who Brian Salmons is, but he had a seven and a third relief appearance for Bry, which is, I mean, you talk about like we obviously talk about how his talk about his acumen for finding waiver wire guys. Getting a guy who pitches 7 and a third inning uh without starting is absolutely absurd. But yeah, I think I'm going to go with Brian here, or not Brian, Bry here. Excuse me, Brian Salmon's messing me up. I think I'm going to go with Bry here. Just has the better team.
Yeah, it's a top four team versus a bottom four team. I haven't seen the ability for this upset out of the Trash Pandas for a while, and I don't think this is going to change the deadline picture, barring an injury. So I'm not going to be paying too close of attention to this one.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. This upcoming matchup we'll discuss about. I think the rest of these matchups are kind of elite team kind of taking on a bottom four team. I would assume. Um, you have the Norfolk Tides taking on the Richmond Flying Squirrels. Scott currently leading 110-83. Looking at right now, a huge game outing out of Jose Quintana, getting him 32 points, and Paul had Luis Hill hit the bump for him. Um, I think similar to kind of the last matchup, I think Paul is in another class. Obviously Sky has the lead right now, but I don't know necessarily how long that will last. Yeah, I'd say I'd probably give Paul the advantage here. Yeah, I think it will be interesting. Paul currently rosters Jack Flaherty. He didn't start this tonight when he was supposed to. He's someone who's been rumored to go to the Yankees. Has been the team I've been hearing. Will be interesting to see how that plays out, not only for just this week, but the weeks to follow. Also, ironically enough, Scott has Nestor Cortez, who I've heard is the pitcher who will get dealt if the Yankees do get Flaherty. I think tomorrow's the real MLB trade deadline, so we'll see how that kind of shakes out. But yeah, I'd say I go with Paul here. Just I think he's got the better team. Although Scott already has some solid performances out Pete Alonso and Ryan Mountcastle. Just don't think that'll really be enough.
Yeah, if this was last year, this would be a whole lot more interesting because Scott's team gave Paul a lot of concern. But this year, Paul's already wiped the floor with the Flying Squirrels, and I think that's going to be the case again. The trade deadline is tomorrow, and if anyone listening wants a podcast for that, let us know in the comments. But This matchup, hopefully Scott keeps it close, but I don't have my hopes up.
Yeah, the next matchup, we got two more left before we're done previewing this week. The Portland Sea Dogs Jab taking on the Bismarck Larks. If Bracken still had Juan Soto, we could have called this the Juan Soto game. But alas, does not have Juan Soto anymore. I guess it's the James Wood semi-revenge tour. Formerly on the Sea Dogs, now back on the Larks. Yeah, I mean, Jab in commanding lead right now, also has the pitching advantage. I want to give a shout out to Vlad Guerrero, who has, I mean, he obviously played a doubleheader this week, but 47 points out of him. He's been lighting the world on fire recently. Really starting to get back into his form. Can't say the same for the Blue Jays, but went 6 for 9 in 2 games with 4 extra base hits and 4 RBIs. Bobby Wood Jr. only played 1 game and still had 28 points. Absolutely absurd. Got to go with Jab here. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. He's the better team. Like, that's kind of what was the theme of the last few matchups.
Next matchup.
Got it. And the last one, the Hartford Yard-Goats and El Paso Chihuahuas. Connor, what do you think of this matchup? I mean, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you got anything to add, I'll let you start it off.
Like, do I need to pick a winner here? I guess I didn't for Jab Braxton technically, but I think everyone involved knows what the outcome is. Let's see what pieces stand out for Smell for the trade deadline, but Height just outscored everybody without a cycle or a no hitter. I'm sure he'll do just fine this week.
Yeah, I think he'll do all right. I don't think he's really going to have any tough challenges here. We know he's going to win. Wow, Grant Holmes at 26 points. Oh, he started this week. Okay, I had Grant Holmes last week and I dropped him. So, but that was going to start, so I'm not too upset with that. But yeah, that'll conclude the week 17 matchups. Looking at the standings, we've always talked about Chad and Tita are battling for that final spot. It's really going to come down to one of those two teams. So I think whoever wins this game will obviously get a huge advantage going into the remaining 3 weeks. But it's not locked in stone. Whoever wins this week gets the 7th seed. Although it's very likely whoever wins will get it. In terms of the top half, Cody at the first seed, 14-2, with John Height, Bry, and Jab all behind him at 13-3. Obviously, the top 4 I feel like has been solidified. It's just where everyone's going to be. So yeah, that's where the standings are looking like. I'm at the 5th seed, I guess, with 10-6, and Paul's rounding out in the 6th seed at 9-7. Connor, you got anything else you want to touch on before we sign things off? Obviously, we're almost at the end of it. 4 weeks left in the season's pretty crazy to think about. I feel like the year's flown by, in my opinion. I got, trade deadline, I think, is 2 weeks away. I don't want to say our trade deadline. I can't 100% confirm or deny that, but definitely coming up on the horizon. But you got anything else to add before we sign things off?
Please beat Cody. It's going to be a whole lot more fun if there are 3 or 4 teams going for the 1 seed rather than just him. And I think Tita Chad's the other thing to watch out for, and hopefully there's some good deals. I do think it is the next Sunday at 11 Central midnight Monday. I don't have my dates, the 11th, 12th. So stay tuned for that. But it should be now the focus is a couple fun matchups.
Yeah, definitely some great times indeed. Trade deadline on the horizon. But that'll do it for week 16 of the Base on Balls podcast. For Connor, I have been Hendog. We'll be back next week with the Base on Balls podcast. Hope you all take care, stay safe, and we'll see you later.